Could or should Serbia join NATO? Russia's invasion of Ukraine has forced Europe to fundamentally rethink its approach to peace and security and how it protects itself in an increasingly unstable world. However, as NATO has expanded to meet this challenge, several European countries remain firmly outside the alliance. One of the most significant of these is Serbia. Despite being largely surrounded by NATO members and pursuing closer European integration, it remains opposed to NATO membership. But what exactly lies behind this position? And has the time come to rethink it? Hello and welcome. I'm James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict and security. In international relations, security rarely comes from isolation. Instead, countries often form regional defence alliances to deter threats and to pool military and intelligence resources. In Europe, that role has long been played by NATO. Having been at the heart of Western European security during the Cold War, the organisation reinvented itself after the fall of the Soviet Union, taking on roles beyond Europe. But that has now changed. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has seen a renewed emphasis on the organisation's original purpose, collective defence. But even though this has seen it expand to take in new members, several European states remain outside. In addition to EU members Austria, Cyprus, Ireland and Malta, this also includes Serbia. However, unlike the others, which are politically committed to defending Europe more widely, even if they haven't joined NATO, Serbia stands apart. Its opposition is far more deeply entrenched. The question, therefore, is whether it can or should change. With a population of 6.8 million, the Republic of Serbia sits at the heart of the Western Balkans, a region that throughout history has been a meeting point for different cultures, religions and strategic competitors. Today, however, Serbia is nearly entirely surrounded by NATO members. Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, North Macedonia, Montenegro and Croatia are all members of the alliance. Meanwhile, Bosnia and Herzegovina lies under the organisation's security umbrella, and so too does Kosovo, and it's this that plays a central role in this whole story. The roots of Serbia's current relationship with NATO stretch back to the aftermath of the Second World War. At the time, Serbia wasn't an independent state. Instead, it was the largest of the 6 republics that formed the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. However, unlike most of communist Eastern Europe, which came under Soviet control, Yugoslavia followed a very different path. After a dramatic break with Stalin in 1948, it positioned itself outside the Cold War military alliances of the US-led North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the USSR-dominated Warsaw Pact. Instead, it became a founding member of the Non-Aligned movement, a broad coalition of states that chose to position themselves outside the superpower rivalry. This non-alignment would become a defining feature of Yugoslavia's foreign policy, giving it a unique role in Europe as a bridge between the East, the West and the global South. But while this strategy may have served the country well, maintaining its political and diplomatic independence and avoiding direct involvement with either NATO or the Warsaw Pact, the end of the Cold War abruptly and violently ended that balancing act. In the early 1990s, Yugoslavia disintegrated, triggering a series of wars that reshaped the Balkans and fundamentally altered Serbia's relationship with the West. Following aggressive nationalism that ignited conflicts in Croatia and Bosnia, the situation escalated in 1999 when intense fighting erupted in the Serbian province of Kosovo, leading to a NATO bombing campaign. This saw the territory eventually placed under UN administration with a NATO peacekeeping force that still remains in place. For many Serbs, the conflict remains a deep wound. In addition to the lives lost during the 78-day air campaign, critical civilian infrastructure was destroyed, including key bridges across the Danube River. But while the West saw all this as a humanitarian operation to save Kosovo Albanian lives, in Serbia it's seen as an illegal act of NATO aggression carried out without UN Security Council authorization. While it may be tempting to think that Serbia and the Serbs have harboured a deep resentment towards NATO since then, things are in fact a little more complicated. A year after the Kosovo conflict, Slobodan Milošević, the Serbian leader who'd led the country into its confrontation with NATO, was overthrown. As the new government embraced political reforms, it also opened the way to Western integration. In addition to signalling its desire to join the European Union, Serbia's relationship with NATO began to improve. This was highlighted in 2006 when the country joined NATO's Partnership for Peace programme, opening the way for greater political and military cooperation. But while all this seemed to bring Serbia closer to the West, everything changed in February 2008 when Kosovo unilaterally declared independence with support from the United States and other key NATO members. Aside from posing a fundamental challenge to Serbia's territorial integrity and national identity, it deepened Serb perceptions that the organisation was directly opposed to their interests. This was further reinforced by Russia's backing of Belgrade's stance, strengthening the view amongst many in Serbia that Russia is a more trustworthy and reliable partner for the country than the West. Since then, Serbian public support for NATO membership, although never strong, has steadily declined to the point that most polls now suggest a large majority opposes it. Instead, successive governments have embraced military neutrality, explicitly rejecting NATO membership while balancing relations between the European Union, Russia, China and the Global South. Meanwhile, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has further hardened attitudes, driven by the widespread view that while Ukraine can defend its territorial integrity and is supported by the West, Serbia was denied that same right and even attacked by NATO. And it's for all these reasons that rather than pushing Serbia closer to NATO, as it has with other European countries, the Ukraine war has instead reinforced opposition to NATO membership. The question, therefore, is whether this can change. For now, it seems highly unlikely. The legacy of the past is just too strong. The 1999 NATO bombing campaign remains politically powerful. Any Serbian government that openly pursued NATO membership would face an intense domestic backlash. Moreover, as long as the Kosovo issue remains open, NATO membership will stay off the table, especially as the large majority of NATO members recognise Kosovo as a sovereign state and continue to support its security. Indeed, there's even a real possibility that some NATO members would block Serbian membership unless and until it finally accepts Kosovo. Finally, resentment over Kosovo reinforced Serbia's commitment to non-alignment and made it an integral part of its diplomatic brand. This view has been strengthened by the increasingly multipolar world order. Many Serbs now see non-alignment as a way to maintain the country's relationships across complex geopolitical divides. Abandoning this stance would require a fundamental redefinition of Serbia's foreign policy identity, although it should be noted that leaving the non-aligned movement is in fact necessary for European Union membership. I hope you're finding this interesting. If so, please do give it a like and perhaps subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It all really helps. Many thanks, and now back to the video. But despite all this, there are also compelling arguments in favour of NATO membership. For a start, and most obviously, Serbia's strategic environment has changed dramatically since the 1990s. All of its neighbours are either NATO members or closely aligned with it. This has left Serbia increasingly isolated in security terms. Secondly, closer alignment with NATO would also bolster Serbia's broader European ambitions. While NATO membership isn't a formal requirement for EU accession, the two processes are often seen as interlinked. Meanwhile, EU membership will require Serbia to align its defence and security policies with the rest of Europe. While this may not mean NATO membership, given the considerable overlap in membership, this will inevitably mean closer alignment with the organisation's policies and perspectives. Thirdly, NATO membership would offer valuable opportunities for the country to modernise its defence and security structures. Serbia's armed forces would certainly benefit significantly. Besides improving standards and training, it would also open up greater prospects for Serbia's vital defence industry. In fact, even without full membership, this has already been happening. Serbia continues practical cooperation with NATO through Partnership for Peace and occasional exercises, although it should be noted that it's maintained a moratorium on most international drills since 2022, albeit with limited exceptions. Likewise, Serbian-made ammunition has reportedly been sent to Ukraine with Belgrade's knowledge, thereby signalling a degree of alignment with European security priorities, albeit carefully presented as a commercial transaction rather than political support. Finally, while many Serbs may see Moscow as a friend, at least for now, there are real concerns about Russia's longer-term goals in the country. Its campaign of misinformation and support for far-right groups threatens to undermine Serbia's democracy. NATO membership would provide the country with valuable security guarantees, even if many people may not see their value, at least for now. So, could or should Serbia join NATO? From a strategic point of view, the case for membership is in fact strong. All its neighbours are members, as are the vast majority of EU states. It would also offer clear advantages for Europe and for Serbia's own defence capabilities. But all this said, from a political and social perspective, the opposition to membership remains deeply entrenched. To this extent, while it may one day change its mind, as things stand, it won't happen anytime soon. Instead, for now, it seems more likely that Serbia will continue to play its traditional balancing act, at least on the surface. While it will cooperate with NATO and NATO members when necessary and align with Europe when it really has to, it'll also continue to stick to the language of neutrality and non-alignment where politically advantageous. All the while, for as long as Kosovo remains an issue, it will avoid any steps that publicly put it at odds with Moscow. However, given the extent to which Europe is increasingly defined by hard security choices, Serbia's position may not be sustainable in the longer term. At some point, it may find that it has to change. But for the moment, the large Balkan gap in the NATO map will remain. But of course, Serbia's relationship with Russia is also highly complex. For more on this, here's another video that you might find useful.